I want you to imagine spending tens of millions of dollars to design this hyper-advanced, totally state-of-the-art sports car. Like, it has the most powerful engine ever conceived.
Right.
And you drop it on the ground, you are so ready to race, and then you realize the only place you have to drive it is this, crumbling, pothole-filled dirt track.
Yeah, that's not going to end well.
No.
Yeah.
Your axle just snaps on the first grader. And you don't blame the car, right? I mean, it's late June 2026, and looking back at the last 24 months of AI deployment, that is the exact reality corporate America just slammed into.
It really is. The most dramatic transformations, they usually happen completely out of sight, down in the plumbing of a system.
Exactly. And today, we're looking at that dirt road, and more importantly, the people who are suddenly tasked with paving it while 1,000 of these sports cars just drove over it at like 200 miles an hour.
It was chaos.
Pure chaos. So we're doing a deep dive today into a pretty wild retrospective. This is from DataPro.News, issue 98 by Samuel Williams. He chronicles the, frankly, almost unrecognizable evolution of data engineering over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's a great piece.
It really is. And I want to be super clear right up front. Even if you aren't a data engineer, even if you have never written a single line of code in your life, this deep dive is basically a masterclass in how an entire profession just transforms overnight.
Because of new technology, yeah.
Right. It's a roadmap for surviving industry upheaval in literally any career. We are uncovering how the people who were quietly managing corporate databases suddenly became the absolute load-bearing pillars of the AI economy. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the core premise that Williams outlines is that the job someone was doing in early 2024, the one they're doing today, they might share a title, but they require a completely different neurological wiring to actually execute.
Right, right. And to understand the intense reality of right now, we kind of have to jump back to that dizzying AI gold rush of early 2024.
Oh, man, the hype.
The hype was insane. Expectations just completely detached from reality. I mean, every startup pitched this idea that prompts would replace pipelines.
Yeah, that didn't age well.
Not at all. Everyone was bolting Argonne to everything. That's retrieval augmented generation, for those who don't know. Basically giving the AI a custom corporate library to read before it answers a prompt.
Exactly. The mandate from the top was just, ship AI features as fast as humanly possible.
Right. But then the 2025 hype hangover arrived. And the numbers Williams drops here are just staggering. He points out a 95% enterprise AI failure rate for initiatives that were trying to reach production at scale.
95%.
95. These massive, hugely funded projects just completely flatlined when they tried to leave the prototype phase.
And, the natural assumption there is that the AI just wasn't smart enough yet. Right?
Right, that's what everyone thought.
But it wasn't the models. The models were actually improving at an incredible rate. The failures were entirely structural. They were entirely in the data.
Okay, so break that down for me. What was actually breaking?
Well, organizations were dealing with deeply inconsistent data quality. They had missing lineage, which means when an AI made some wild claim, there was literally no way to trace exactly which rogue document in the system fed it that information.
Wow.
Yeah. And on top of that, you had companies relying on batch architectures. So these are systems designed to slowly process data overnight. And suddenly, they're being forced to serve real-time, millisecond AI inference. As Williams puts it, the explorers who rushed ahead to claim the AI frontier, they basically left their supply lines totally unmanned.
Wait, hold on. I need to push back on that a second. Wasn't data engineering always supposed to be about data quality?
I mean, yes.
Like, it's literally in the job description. Why did it take an AI gold rush to expose that the roads were dirt? Weren't these engineers already supposed to be building superhighways?
Well, they were building roads, but for a drastically different type of traffic.
Okay.
For years, the end goal of a massive data pipeline was usually just a business intelligence dashboard.
Right, like a chart for the CEO.
Exactly. A human executive looks at a pie chart on a screen. If that dashboard is updated once a day, and maybe a few rows of data are slightly misaligned, causing like a 1% error, the human being provides a cognitive buffer.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right. They instinctively know something looks a bit off, they ask a follow-up question, or they just gloss over it.
Yeah, a human executive doesn't accidentally sell off an entire division of the company just because a spreadsheet had a formatting error in cell D4.
Exactly. But an autonomous AI agent absolutely does.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
An agent making thousands of decisions a second has zero cognitive buffer.
Yeah.
It takes that misaligned data, confidently hallucinates a reality based on it, and executes a real-world action immediately.
So the AI rush required this perfectly smooth, zero latency infrastructure because we basically removed the human safety net.
Precisely. The dirt roads were exposed the second we asked machines to drive on them blindfolded. And Williams notes that while the infrastructure was already kind of buckling under the weight of AI, 2025 and 2026 hit the profession with three massive simultaneous shockwaves.
Right, and these just completely rewrote the architectural rules.
Totally. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the first shockwave he mentions is economic.
Which we can trace back to January 2025, the DeepSeek moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
that it completely crashed the price of AI reasoning. It exposed the massive subsidy models that Western AI vendors were running just to capture market share.
Right, they were basically burning cash to stay relevant.
Exactly. And when the floor fell out on pricing, the financial models for enterprise AI were just thrown into absolute chaos. Suddenly, data engineers had this entirely new responsibility forced onto their plates. They had to become compute economists.
Okay, compute economists. I love that term. But wait, how does a data engineer sitting at a terminal writing Python suddenly have to act like a Wall Street portfolio manager?
It's all through dynamic routing. Before this, you basically just sent all your data to one giant model and paid whatever the API cost was.
Just a flat fee, basically.
Right. But post-DeepSeek, engineers had to build gateway architecture that evaluates every single query in real time.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So if a user asks the system to solve a really complex logical puzzle, the engineer's routing code sends that prompt to an expensive top-tier frontier model. But if the system is just, summarizing a massive tile of standard emails, the basic long-tail tasks, the code automatically routes that data to a cheap open weights model.
Open weights meaning the core architecture is free, so it costs fractions of a penny to run locally.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like a head chef at a massive restaurant, right?
Sure.
But instead of just cooking the meal, the chef has to stand at the stove and negotiate global commodity prices for ingredients in real time.
That's actually a great way to put it.
Like, if the price of butter spikes in Paris mid-stir, the chef has to build a mechanical system that instantly swaps the recipe to use olive oil, and the customer can't even taste the difference.
That captures the mechanical reality perfectly. They are constantly balancing capability against cost on this microscopic millisecond level. The economic risk of the entire pipeline now sits squarely on their shoulders.
That sounds incredibly stressful. So economics dictated the cost, but the source highlights a second shockwave that hit a few months later, August 2, 2025, and this fundamentally altered the legality of the job.
Yes, the enforcement deadline for the EU AI Act. I get, actually kind of overly excited about this part, but this is where the sheer technical complexity of the job goes completely off the charts.
Right, because we moved from voluntary ethical guidelines to hard, non-negotiable architectural constraints.
Exactly. And, compliance usually feels like a legal team's problem, right?
Yeah, the lawyers write a document, the company signs it, we all go back to work.
Not anymore. The EU AI Act made compliance a structural engineering problem. Engineers who had spent their entire careers optimizing purely for speed, just trying to get data from point A to point B with the lowest possible latency, they suddenly had to build these massive, cumbersome audit trails.
What does building an audit trail actually look like at that kind of scale? I mean, a million decisions a second.
Well, you can't just save the final answer the AI generated. That's not enough. You have to capture and store the exact state of your database at the millisecond the AI made the decision.
Wow.
You need the specific version of the model that was used and the precise weights of the retrieval system. You have to build bias detection pipelines that are constantly monitoring the data flowing in to ensure it isn't skewing against protected classes.
Yeah.
And honestly, most difficult of all, you have to build contestability mechanisms.
Contestability meaning if the AI denies someone a mortgage, that person has the legal right to contest it.
Exactly. And the data engineer has to build a reverse pipeline to technically unwind that decision. They have to pull up the exact snapshot in time and prove mathematically why the model missed that choice.
That is insane.
If you cannot trace exactly what data influenced an AI's decision, you simply cannot legally deploy it. The compliance sits entirely in the code.
Okay, so the data has to be economically viable and legally bulletproof. But neither of those explain why the physical data itself changed. The third shockwave. How did the real world break the infrastructure?
Oh, this is the wildest part. The third shockwave was physical reality. It was the arrival of production-ready robotics at enterprise scale.
Which was heavily signaled by that Boston Dynamics Atlas debut at CES 2026.
Yeah, that was the tipping point.
Robots moving into logistics, manufacturing, warehouse floors.
Right. And as those fleets scaled up, the definition of, quote-unquote data quality morphed again. Data engineers were no longer just managing text files or PDFs or customer purchase histories. They were managing time-aligned sensor streams.
Like the actual physical telemetry of machines.
Yes. Machines operating in three-dimensional space right alongside human workers.
I see where this is going. If a database of customer names has a lag of 2 seconds, a user sees a spinning loading wheel on a website, nobody gets hurt.
Exactly. But if a 400-pound autonomous robot carrying steel across a factory floor experiences a sensor processing lag of 2 seconds,
You have a catastrophic physical injury.
you do. The latency requirements fundamentally change when the data dictates kinetic motion. The architecture pattern required to manage streaming physical telemetry is entirely different from what you use to index a corporate policy manual.
So data basically went from being a digital asset to a financial liability, a legal liability, and a physical liability almost overnight.
Practically overnight.
So let's look at the human beings standing in the middle of this maelstrom. Because the demands of the job mutated so fundamentally, Williams points out that this pressure cooker forced a brutal, undeniable split in the profession. The Great Divergence.
Yeah, the hiring data from late 2025 and early 2026 makes this split painfully obvious. And the dividing line between the two groups that emerged, it wasn't about seniority.
Right.
It wasn't about who knew the hottest programming language. The distinction was pure instinct.
He divides them into Group 1 and Group 2. What does a Group 1 engineer actually do all day now?
So Group 1 operates on what Williams calls an infrastructure instinct. These are engineers who thrive on rigor under pressure. Their daily work involves things like context engineering,
Which means
meticulously shaping the data environment so the AI has exactly the right background information injected into its prompt before it even acts. They run model ops, ensuring these massive systems don't degrade over time. They build evaluation loop design.
evaluation loops being those automated systems that constantly test the AI to make sure it isn't, getting dumber or drifting off mission.
Precisely. They are looking at the entire system and asking, how do we govern this chaos? What happens to our server load when a fleet of autonomous AI agents hits our system with completely unpredictable, highly complex queries at 2 in the morning?
They're systems thinkers.
Yes. And Williams notes they are absolutely thriving right now.
But then there is Group 2, the engineers driven by a tactical instinct.
Right. Their historical relationship with data was purely transactional. A request comes in, you write the code to move the data, you clean it up, you put it on a dashboard, you close the JIRA ticket, and you move on.
But the hiring market shows this group is facing severe automation pressure.
Unprecedented automation pressure.
Because AI tools can write standard pipelines now, right?
Faster and significantly more efficiently than human beings ever could. What's fascinating here is that if the job is just building a conventional R layer or setting up a familiar warehouse schema, an AI can generate that syntax in seconds.
Wow.
The routine tactical execution work is being aggressively claimed by the models themselves.
So if the old way of just moving data to a dashboard is dead, what happens to the engineers who only know how to do that? Are they just obsolete? I mean, I imagine someone listening right now might be thinking, can't a tactical engineer just take a weekend boot camp, learn the new AI toolchain, and catch up?
Well, a weekend course won't save them because it is not about knowing the syntax of a new tool.
Yeah.
The tools literally change every Tuesday now.
That's fair.
The engineers who navigated this upheaval best are not the ones with the deepest knowledge of any single software platform. They are the ones who learned to ask the right questions when the established maps ran out.
Because an AI can write the code to move data from point A to point B, but an AI cannot sit in a boardroom and determine the legal and operational blast radius of a failure.
Exactly. That requires uniquely human context. Group 1 survives because they look at a blank architectural map and ask, what is this system actually accountable for? What happens when it fails? Who finds out? And when?
The technical skills that made someone highly valuable in 2023 will absolutely not keep them employed in 2027 if they lack that navigational instinct.
Spot on.
That is a profound lesson for literally any industry going through disruption right now. Your value isn't your technical execution anymore, it's your ability to manage the unknown.
Right.
Which perfectly brings us to the next Horizon Williams covers, because that exact survival trait navigating when the maps run out is the mechanism needed for the massive wave currently crashing over the enterprise space. Autonomous agents.
Agent sprawl.
Yeah.
It is arguably the most acute operational crisis facing corporate infrastructure today.
The source describes these fleets of AI workers consuming data states with, and this phrase honestly gave me chills, zero institutional memory and zero tolerance for ambiguity.
It's a terrifying combination.
And it really is. It
Yeah.
sounds like we went from managing a quiet, orderly library where humans occasionally come in, ask for a book, and sit down to read it, to trying to manage a swarm of 1,000,000 locusts. The locusts are devouring the information at lightning speed, ripping pages out, combining them, and taking instant action out in the real world based on what they read. And you're legally liable if one locust eats a bad leaf.
That is exactly what's happening. And this raises an important question, probably the most critical hypothetical in the entire retrospective. Think about the retrieval corpus.
The massive body of documents the AI uses to find answers.
Right. What happens when a piece of that data goes stale?
Let's ground this for the listener in a real example. Say a company updates its refund policy, okay? The old policy says customers get 90 days to return an item. The new policy says 30 days.
Okay, so normally, a human employee looking at a document from 3 years ago provides institutional memory. They pause and think, wait, didn't management change this rule last year? They ask a colleague.
They have common sense.
Exactly. Autonomous agents do not have a pause button. Unless the concept of time is explicitly engineered into the retrieval corpus by a Group 1 engineer, the agent pulls the outdated 90-day policy and ships yesterday's rule as today's absolute truth to a customer.
And it does it in milliseconds.
Milliseconds.
So who finds out? And when do they find out?
Usually when the financial damage is already done, and this cascades into the final major shift we are seeing, which is accountability.
Right.
When that autonomous agent ships the wrong policy, or hallucinates a terrible financial trade,
Yeah.
or causes a physical robot to drop a beam on a factory floor, courts, regulators, and technical organizations, they are no longer pointing the finger at the AI model.
Because you can't sue an algorithm.
You cannot. So they trace the data lineage backward. They look at those audit trails mandated by regulations like the EU AI Act, and they point the finger of legal responsibility directly at the data engineering function.
Wow.
The people who built the retrieval corpus are on the hook.
It's like the explorer who charts new territory has to name what they find, and by naming it, they accept the legal and operational responsibility for it.
Naming the territory means owning the risk. The job has become incredibly strategic, obviously, but the cost of that seat at the table is carrying the ultimate liability for the entire automated enterprise.
Unbelievable. So let's look at the big picture and really synthesize what this means for you sitting out there listening. Data engineering has stretched into this massive, polarized spectrum.
Yeah, a complete divergence.
On one end, you have routine, tactical pipeline work that is being rapidly automated away. And on the other end, you have deeply human, high-stakes governance design, compute economics, and complex systems architecture.
The profession finally achieved the strategic importance it always promised, but the daily reality of the work is entirely unrecognizable from what it was just 2 years ago.
Exactly. And the core takeaway here, whether you are in finance, marketing, or tech trying to navigate your own career through whatever disruption is hitting your field, is this. The most valuable thing you can do isn't getting a new software certification.
No.
It's stopping, looking at the systems you manage, and asking the fundamental question, what am I actually responsible for?
It is the only anchor in the storm right now. And, looking at the reality of agent sprawl that Williams details, it leaves me with a somewhat haunting question that builds on this entire idea of institutional memory.
Oh, what's the question?
Well, the source makes it clear that fleets of AI workers have no memory. They are driven entirely by data engineered purely for the present moment, just the immediate query.
Right.
So if our future corporate infrastructure relies entirely on these amnesiac AI agents, what happens to a company's actual identity 5 years from now?
Oh, wow.
Will future data engineers have to invent something like digital nostalgia?
Digital nostalgia.
Yeah, will they have to literally write code that mimics corporate intuition into the data pipelines,
Yeah.
just to keep a company feeling remotely human and connected to its own past.
Digital nostalgia, coding corporate intuition into a pipeline, just having to program a system to remember why a company does things a certain way, not just how.
Exactly. How do you govern a soul?
Man, that is something for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends. Because whether you are driving a billion-dollar AI sports car or just trying to navigate the shifting roads of your own career, you better make sure someone is out there paving the dirt.
Absolutely.
And more importantly, you better make sure they remember where the road was supposed to lead in the first place. Thanks for joining us on this exploration. We'll catch you next time.